Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're looking at three colossal peaks, K2, Annapurna, and Nanga Parbat.
Yeah, giants. And in 2025, they still hold this reputation. Just incredibly deadly places.
Absolutely. But there's this pull, isn't there? For certain adventurers, these incredibly dangerous slopes are, well, irresistible.
That's the fascinating part. So we're diving deep into why these mountains, all 8,000ers, over 8,000 meters high, have this formidable, lethal reputation.
And what keeps drawing climbers to risk, well, everything for a shot at the summit.
Exactly. We've got some really interesting information here. Let's just explore these giants.
Yeah.
Think of it as a sort of intense look at the dangers baked right in. The stark statistics as they stand around 2025.
And the human stories, often harrowing ones.
Definitely. The human element is key.
So our mission today, understand from the ground up what makes these mountains so deadly.
And why people still make these attempts in 2025. We're using detailed accounts, current data, really trying to get under the skin of these peaks.
Okay, so let's start broad. What are the fundamental challenges, the gauntlets anyone faces on climbs like these?
Well, it's multifaceted, really. It hits you on every level, physically, obviously, but also mentally, emotionally. It's a profound test.
Right.
Let's start with the big one, altitude. Once you get above 8,000 meters, you're in what they call the death zone.
The death zone. Sounds chilling.
And it is. The air is so thin, there's just not enough oxygen for your body to, well, sustain itself for very long.
So oxygen deprivation becomes critical, like life-threatening within hours?
Potentially, yeah. It's an immediate critical threat. Climbers rely heavily on supplemental oxygen.
But even that's not a perfect solution, is it?
No, not at all. It helps, but it can't fully make up for the lack of atmospheric pressure. Your body is still under immense strain.
So it's not just feeling winded, it's a fundamental physiological attack. And then there are the conditions themselves.
Oh, absolutely brutal. The physical toll is just immense. We're talking extreme muscle fatigue, a constant fight against dehydration.
And frostbite must be a huge risk.
Huge. Temperatures can plummet to minus 40 Celsius, even colder. Frostbite is a very real, very dangerous threat.
And the weather, notoriously unpredictable at those heights.
Extremely volatile. Violent storms can just appear out of nowhere almost, bringing whiteouts where you can't see a thing.
And the avalanches.
Avalanches are a constant deadly risk, always there.
And each mountain has its own specific hazards on top of that, right?
They definitely do. K2, for example, has the bottleneck, infamous spot.
Why is that?
It's this narrow passage right underneath a massive hanging sérac, basically a huge unstable chunk of glacier ice.
Oh, okay.
Very dangerous. It was the site of that terrible disaster in 2008, an ice collapse, multiple fatalities.
Right, I remember reading about that. And Annapurna.
Annapurna is notorious for its avalanche-prone slopes, just inherently unstable terrain in many areas.
Nanga Parbat.
Often gets hit with incredibly strong gale force winds, just ferocious.
And that's on top of the usual suspects. Rockfalls, crevasses.
Exactly. Hidden crevasses, deep cracks in the ice, unstable ice falls. The landscape itself is constantly shifting, constantly posing threats.
And these aren't hikes. The technical climbing involved sounds incredibly demanding.
That's a really key point. You don't just walk up these. You need serious, advanced mountaineering skills.
Like what specifically?
Well, K2's slopes are relentlessly steep, often icy, requires top-level ice climbing, complex rope work.
And Annapurna. I heard about its south face.
Yeah, the south face. It's this colossal 3,000-meter wall of rock and ice, widely seen as one of the hardest technical climbs anywhere.
Wow.
And Nanga Parbat has the Rupal face, the tallest mountain face on the planet, near vertical ascents.
So a tiny mistake.
Can be fatal, absolutely. The concentration required, the mental focus, just to navigate that kind of terrain safely is immense.
It's hard to even imagine the psychological pressure on top of the physical danger.
It must be profound, the isolation, the constant awareness that things could go wrong at any moment, the fear.
And you mentioned ethical dilemmas too, like in the 2008 K2 incident.
Exactly. Climbers facing these incredibly tough decisions about helping others, sometimes at immense personal risk, like Jer McDonald's attempts. Heroic, but ultimately tragic.
So mental resilience isn't just nice to have, it's critical for survival.
Absolutely critical. Panic, despair. Those can lead to fatal errors very, very quickly in that environment.
It's just amazing people still attempt these climbs. Our info mentions, slight improvements in gear, forecasting for 2025.
Right, and those help, marginally.
But the mountains themselves,
Yeah.
still fundamentally unforgiving.
That's the crux of it. Yes, gear is better, forecasts are better, but the core dangers of extreme altitude, the objective hazards of these specific peaks, they remain. These are inherently dangerous places. The margin for error is just razor thin.
Okay, let's zoom in then, starting with K2, the Savage Mountain. What gives it that nickname? What makes it so notorious?
K2, 8,611 meters. World's second highest, straddling the Pakistan-China border in the Karakorums.
Savage Mountain. Sounds intimidating.
It is. There are simply no easy routes up K2. Demands respect.
And the stats bear that out.
They do. As of August 2023, roughly 800 summits, but 96 deaths. That gives a fatality rate around 13.7%.
Still incredibly high, though maybe lower than some older figures.
Yeah, possibly because the number of attempts has gone up over time, which statistically lowers the percentage rate, even if the absolute number of deaths increases.
Right.
For 2025, estimates are maybe 100 to 150 climbers attempting it each year. Permit costs, somewhere between $7,500 and $12,000.
So what are the specific dangers driving that 13.7% rate?
Well, the slopes are just relentless, often around 45 degrees, incredibly steep, demanding huge stamina. The weather is famously extreme, shifts incredibly fast. And then, as we mentioned, the bottleneck.
That narrow passage under the seracs.
Exactly. A truly perilous section. Site of the 2008 tragedy and other incidents. Constant threats from avalanches, rockfalls, sudden storms.
And it's remote, too, making rescues harder.
It's very remote. Rescue operations are exceptionally difficult. And unlike Everest, you don't see huge numbers of commercial expeditions. It tends to attract more experienced, often elite climbers.
Gotcha.
And it's telling that while the first ascent was way back in 1954 by an Italian team, there's still no recorded, verified winter summit of K2. That just highlights the extreme conditions.
Wow. Okay, the info we have includes a sort of hypothetical journey up K2 via the Abruzzi Spur. What did that highlight?
Yeah, that hypothetical really drives home the sustained difficulty. Even just getting to base camp is tough.
Right.
Then at Camp 1, altitude sickness starts hitting. Getting to Camp 2 means tackling house's chimney, this vertical rock chute, needing real skill.
Sounds tough.
They even imagine getting pinned down by a storm for 2 days. Shows the weather unpredictability. Then the Black Pyramid at Camp 3, complex ice and rock.
And eventually the bottleneck.
At 8,200 meters, portrayed as this incredibly high-stakes gamble. And even after the summit, the descent is dangerous. They describe a teammate having a near fall. The risk never stops.
And the whole thing takes
Around 60 days in that hypothetical. Just illustrates the massive time commitment, the endurance needed.
unbelievable. So with all that risk, why K2? What's the pull?
I think a big part is the exclusivity. The source notes fewer people have summited K2 than have been to space.
That's an amazing statistic.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the difficulty. It's seen as the ultimate mountaineer's mountain because of its technical demands.
And the danger itself is part of the allure.
For some, perhaps. The stark fatality rate is a constant reminder of what's at stake. It represents the absolute pinnacle for many serious climbers.
Okay, let's move to Annapurna I. Our sources call it unequivocally the deadliest of all. That's a heavy title. What backs that up?
Annapurna 3rd, 10th highest, 8,091 meters in Nepal. And yeah, it consistently holds that unenviable title.
What are the numbers?
As of March 2022, only 365 summits. But 72 deaths on ascent, another 9 on descent. That works out to a fatality rate of roughly 19%.
19%. That's staggering. Higher than K2.
Significantly higher, and some older estimates put it even higher than that. What's really striking is how few people attempt it compared to others.
Fewer attempts.
Yeah, in 2025, maybe only 50 to 80 climbers a year. The permit's actually quite cheap, around $1,800. But the sheer danger clearly deters many.
So what makes Annapurna so deadly, more so than K2?
It seems to be a combination of factors, but the main one is its exceptional susceptibility to avalanches. Huge, unpredictable avalanche risk across many slopes.
Right.
And the weather is also highly unpredictable. We mentioned the technical south face, that 3,000-meter wall.
Yeah.
But even the easier routes are threatened. Remember the 2014 snowstorm disaster? That hit the Annapurna region hard, killed many trekkers and climbers, underscored the volatility.
So avalanches and weather. Any other key dangers?
Lots of seracs, those unstable ice blocks, dangerous crevasses, high winds. It's just a hazardous environment all around.
And I read something about fixed ropes, or lack thereof.
That's another key point. Unlike Everest, many sections on Annapurna routes lack fixed ropes. Climbers need to be much more self-reliant, technically proficient.
Even the North Face routes have issues.
Yeah, climbers often talk about the dangerous avalanche gullies on the north side. It seems unavoidable risk is just part of the Annapurna experience.
And the first ascent itself was costly, wasn't it?
Hugely. Maurice Herzog's French team in 1950, a monumental achievement, first 8,000 are ever climbed. But Herzog and Louis Lachenal suffered severe frostbite, leading to amputations. A grim precedent.
Wow. Okay, the hypothetical journey for Annapurna used the Dutch rib route. What dangers stood out there?
That account really hammers home the constant avalanche threat,
Hmm.
even on a supposedly less exposed route.
Right from the start.
Pretty much. Deep snow at Camp 1. Having to actively dodge falling seracs near Camp 2 paints a picture of just inherent instability.
Any other incidents in that imagined climb?
Yeah, teammates' oxygen mask malfunctions adds that critical technical failure risk. A near miss with an avalanche between Camps 2 and 3.
Just constant danger.
Seems like it. The final push involves a treacherous knife-edge ridge, exposed to high winds. Yeah. Even the summit is described as this broad, snow-covered plateau, maybe not offering that same peak feeling.
And the descent.
A teammate gets severe frostbite, echoing that first descent cost. The whole thing is imagined over 45 days. Sustained effort, sustained risk.
So it sounds like you can absolutely never relax on Annapurna. Why on earth climb it then?
I think the allure is the danger, and the incredibly low number of summits. It's seen as an ultimate test for the elite.
Like Ueli Steck's solo ascent.
Exactly. His solo of the South Face in 2013 just amplified its legendary and fearsome status. But its history is also full of tragedy.
Like Ian Clough.
Yeah, his death in 1970 was a major event, a stark reminder. It seems to attract climbers drawn to its raw, untamed nature and maybe the sheer unlikelihood of success.
Okay, third giant, Nanga Parbat, the killer mountain. Our sources suggest its fatality rate might even edge out Annapurna's.
Nanga Parbat. Ninth highest, 8,126 meters in Pakistan. And yes, that nickname, Killer Mountain, is historically well-earned. The stats we have as of May 2022 put the rate around 21%,
21%.
based on over 60 deaths from about 400 summits. And historically, before 1990, the rate was astronomical. Some estimates put it near 77% due to disastrous early expeditions.
Unbelievable. How many attempts now?
In 2025, maybe 60 to 100 climbers a year, mostly via the Daimir face. Permit costs are similar to K2.
And there was that horrific attack too.
Tragically, yes. The 2013 Taliban attack at base camp, killing 11 climbers, added this completely different, awful dimension of risk to that mountain.
A truly chilling reminder, risks aren't just environmental. What about the mountaineering challenges that drive that high fatality rate?
Well, Nanga Parbat boasts the Rupal face. At 4,600 meters, it's the single biggest mountain face on Earth, an immense technical challenge.
Wow.
Even the more common Daimir face is dangerous, lots of avalanches, rock falls, and the weather is notoriously unstable. Sudden gales, violent storms are common.
And those early expeditions.
The 1934 German expedition disaster, where 10 climbers died, really cemented its killer reputation early on.
But Hermann Bull summited solo.
He did in 1953. An incredible feat solo, no supplemental oxygen, legendary. But it also highlights just how extreme the mountain is.
Okay, the hypothetical journey for Nanga Parbat took the Daimir face route. What stood out there?
That account emphasizes objective dangers right away. Even getting to Camp 1 means crossing a heavily crevassed glacier.
Risky from the get-go.
Then a close call with rockfall near Camp 2. The climb to Camp 3 involves a steep 40-degree ice slope, needing precise crampon work.
And weather plays a role again.
Big time. They imagine being trapped by a severe storm high up at 700-800 meters for 3 days. Just emphasizes the vulnerability.
I got a summit push.
The summit ridge is described as incredibly exposed, high fall risk. And during the descent, a teammate gets severe altitude sickness.
And the duration.
About 55 days in that hypothetical. Again, prolonged exposure to extreme, deadly conditions.
Definitely lives up to the killer mountain name. So why attempt Nanga Parbat? What's the motivation there?
It seems to be this powerful mix of its stunning beauty and its sheer brutality.
How so?
The Daimir Valley below is relatively gentle, meadows and such. It creates this stark contrast with the immense, deadly faces looming above.
In the history aspect, like Buell.
For sure. That desire to push limits, make history, follow in the footsteps of legends like Buell. But the high fatality rate, the unpredictability, and that awful 2013 attack, they're constant, grim reminders of the risks.
Okay, so let's compare them directly. Our information points to Annapurna as statistically the deadliest of the three in 2025, despite Nanga Parbat having that slightly higher 21% figure in this specific data point mentioned. How do we reconcile that? Is it about overall trends versus specific snapshots?
That's a good point. The text does label Annapurna the deadliest of all as a general title, while citing specific stats. Annapurna 19%, Nanga Parbat 21%, K2 13.7% from specific dates. It might be that Annapurna's consistent danger profile, especially from avalanches, gives it that overall reputation, even if Nanga Parbat's rate was slightly higher in that specific 2022 snapshot.
Right, consistency versus a specific point in time. Nanga Parbat's rate was historically much higher too.
Exactly. And Annapurna has significantly fewer summits overall, 365 versus K2's 800 and Nanga Parbat's 400. That low summit count relative to deaths strongly reinforces its deadly reputation.
So what are the key reasons Annapurna seems so consistently dangerous?
Primarily that exceptional avalanche risk on almost all routes, and the lack of fixed ropes compared to, say, Everest or even parts of K2. It demands more from the climber in inherently unstable terrain.
While Nanga Parbat has its history and the recent security risks.
Right. And K2, while technically perhaps the hardest overall, has more attempts, which might dilute the percentage rate, and often attracts very experienced teams maybe better equipped for its specific challenges, like the technical rock and ice.
The sources mention climber testimonials online, like on Reddit. What do they say?
Yeah, those are interesting. Climbers often describe Annapurna's avalanche gullies as feeling almost unavoidable. Like, it's not if an avalanche will happen nearby, but when.
Compared to K2's bottleneck.
Which is also incredibly dangerous, don't get me wrong. But some climbers feel that maybe with careful timing, assessment of conditions, you can slightly mitigate the risk there, though it's still Russian roulette. Annapurna's risk feels more pervasive, less avoidable.
And technically, Annapurna's south face versus Nanga Parbat's routes.
The south face of Annapurna is consistently described as being in a league of its own, technically. Even compared to the massive Rupal face, the technical difficulty is often cited as higher on Annapurna's south face routes.
And that 2014 storm really cemented Annapurna's reputation too, didn't it?
Absolutely. It was a devastating event for the whole region and really highlighted how quickly and catastrophically conditions can change there.
It's so easy to talk stats, but the information rightly stresses the human cost. These numbers represent real tragedies.
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember that. The 2008 K2 disaster, 11 lives lost, including Jer McDonald trying to rescue others. That's not just a statistic.
No.
Or Ian Clough on Annapurna in 1970, killed by a falling serac during Chris Bonington's expedition. That had a huge impact.
And Nanga Parbat's early history.
With that 1934 German expedition, 10 lives lost. Haunting stories behind the numbers.
And it's not just those who die. The survivors often carry heavy burdens, too.
Definitely. Maurice Herzog's frostbite after Annapurna losing fingers and toes. That's legendary, the physical cost.
And more recently.
Climbers like Ali Pepper summiting Annapurna without oxygen. She's spoken about the immense mental toll, the constant fear of avalanches. These accounts really bring home the reality, the sheer resilience needed.
So after all this, the dangers, the stats, the human cost, what is the enduring allure? Why do people keep going back to these deadly peaks?
It's complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
Deeply personal motivations. For many, it's about mastery, pushing themselves against the specific, immense technical challenges each peak offers.
K2's ridges, Annapurna's face, Nanga Parbat scale.
Exactly. These demand years of dedication, skill, experience. There's also, for some, a spiritual element, that quote about touching the edge of existence.
A profound experience.
Seems so. And the camaraderie, the bonds formed between climbers sharing these intense, high-stakes experiences must be incredibly powerful.
But the price is just so incredibly high.
It really is. Physically, obviously, but also ethically, those life-or-death rescue choices. Emotionally, the toll on families back home.
And financially, too.
Definitely. Tens of thousands of dollars per expedition, $20,000, $50,000, even more. It's a massive commitment on all fronts.
And while tech helps a bit, satellite phones, drones, maybe?
The core dangers, the fundamental risks of gravity, weather, and altitude on mountains this size, they remain. Technology hasn't tamed them.
So wrapping up this deep dive, K2, Annapurna, Nanga Parbat in 2025. It really is a picture of incredibly perilous undertakings.
Absolutely. Climbing these giants truly is, as the source material puts it, a dance with death. Annapurna, with that pervasive avalanche risk and 19% fatality rate, really stands out as consistently deadly. Nanga Parbat close behind at 21% in that snapshot with its own brutal history. K2, technically immense, slightly lower rate at 13.7%, but still incredibly dangerous.
And the number of people who actually summit each year is tiny, relatively speaking.
Very small,
Hmm?
maybe 50 to 150 per peak in 2025. It just underscores the scale of the challenge, the odds against success.
Our hypothetical journeys got us to the top of all three, but the reality for climbers is so much harsher, the odds far worse.
Precisely. The rewards are profound, no doubt the views, the triumph, the history, but the risks are equally immense, always present.
Every step is a gamble.
And every summit, in many ways, feels like a small miracle.
So for you listening, after hearing about the stats, the dangers, the stories of K2, Annapurna, and Nanga Parbat in 2025, here's a final thought to ponder.
Yeah, a provocative one, perhaps.
Which of these formidable peaks, if any, would you choose to climb? It's a question that makes you think about your own tolerance for risk, doesn't it?
And about that enduring, powerful allure of the world's highest, deadliest places.
Something to consider.
Hmm.
And for more explorations from the edge, do check out my other adventures.